All right. So I've mentioned this in a couple of different contexts. So, very directly, mentors are seen as an extension of the teaching team. We want you to help your team to avoid confirmation bias. And you will learn more about hypotheses on day one. So when we do the kickoff for the national program, right in day one is, how you think about your product or service, how you can put together good customer discovery questions and hypotheses, and how you can actually put those hypotheses in front of customers without talking about your technology, right? Because it's really all about the customer pain, the customer want, the customer needs. So we will talk more about that in day one, but as a level setting here, you're really trying to make sure that those 100 interviews that the teams are doing over 7 weeks, are good interviews, that there's no spoiled data in there. And that's why we like to put that as first and foremost, really avoiding confirmation bias. Because it's okay to learn at the end of 100 interviews that you might not have a commercially viable product or service. That's okay. That's actually, that is in some ways a win. In fact, maybe in every way it's a win. But the reality is that we want to make sure that those 100 interviews are useful. So avoiding confirmation bias is critical. You're also going to help identify and correct gaps in teams' business knowledge. The reality is that some of these folks, and entrepreneurial leads and technical leads, are not going to know some things about business that you're going to know. I mean, that's the entire purpose of the term industry mentor, right? It's someone that knows something about industry that they don't know. Mentor, the fact that you need to teach them and correct them on things that they might not be aware of. So, that is a big piece of the job. Help them understand and summarize what they hear in the interviews. This, might seem self-explanatory, but I think one of the things that really comes out of the fact that you have a deep industry knowledge, that you have an interest in helping people, is I want to make sure that they're looking deeper into some of the words that were used. One of my techniques, and I'm not saying it's a good technique, it's just something that has worked for me, is when I'm able to be at an interview, I think that's fantastic. I'm actually listening, I'm taking notes, I'm not interfering with the entrepreneurial leads, but I'm taking my own notes. But sometimes when I'm not there, let's say 2 team members might come back to a debrief session and they heard 2 different things. And I might just say, so why do you think you heard that differently? And the reality is that that's because of confirmation bias. It's because of their own experiences. It's because a word can mean, 2 or 3 things, quite literally, right? So also understanding maybe the deeper meaning behind what they heard. And again, that's where you're going to have knowledge that they don't have. That's where we really rely on you to help them understand and summarize. And then, of course, I mentioned this earlier, and I feel like this is self-explanatory. Reinforce the teaching material. There have been failure modes, and I'll just be very honest about it, where the mentors, because sometimes a mentor will be a little more objective, or sometimes they'll be a little more what I'll call subjectively qualified. That is, they have friends on the team and they know people personally. Your job is really to teach them. If you think about the overarching goal of the experiential learning itself, the teaching material has been refined over years to put more science into the process of acceleration and commercialization and discovery. So we just want to make sure that the mentors are not saying, well, yeah, don't worry about what the teaching team said. That doesn't really apply. Let me tell you how it really works. You could absolutely have that in your heart and head. And again, I've got a commercial side to me. I've got a professional investor side to me that, quite frankly, I try to leave at the door, because it doesn't really help them if I'm just trying to tell them what I think. Instead, I want to teach them a process where they can go learn for themselves. So that's where, if we're just reinforcing the teaching material as mentors, I think that's where it gets very powerful.